tell me difference between Indians building startups in India versus Indians building startups in Silicon Valley. क्या difference है दोनों में? क्योंकि हम लोग बात कर रहे थे क्या इंडियंस को जाना चाहिए अमेरिका की नहीं जाना चाहिए, and blanket answer for you was no. So I want to put more nuance.
No, it's not a blanket answer. My point is more subtle, which is go into it with kind of eyes and ears open, because the issue of identity, which we talked about, is also an issue of family and community, which you will leave behind.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I left at a time in the 80s. Ab to kafi aasan hai. You can do WhatsApp calls, you can do video calls. When I went, even to make one phone call cost $5 a minute, right? So communicating, relationship with family, my parents, very, very difficult. And I paid a price, they paid a price, right? So just that's the only point I'm making, that if you do it, then just be aware that things that you don't value so much right now, you will come back and you will reflect and maybe even regret. That's my only point. I don't discourage people from doing it. Lots happening in the US. US is also not as welcoming to immigration, particularly with Trump now. Also something to keep in mind, because there's this America first attitude, which is going to be quite difficult. Indians are, coming back to your question, someone did put out some research. I actually saw it on LinkedIn. I think it's a Stanford professor, I forget his name, looking at the unicorn creators in Silicon Valley. And the number one category was Indians, which is quite interesting. So Indians, now not all of them are immigrants. Some of them actually are the next generation. I mean, my son is 32 now, so that's literally the next generation.
Wow.
And so it's that generation also. So Indians have done brilliantly in the Valley. And it's all the things you talked about, which is, while they're smart, there are a lot of us. And some of the smartest went to the US and they're hungry. I mean, if they go there, it's the immigrant ethic. They're determined, they're resilient. They're determined that, okay, if I've come to this country or my parents came to this country, I would succeed. So those are standout qualities.
So differences क्या होते हैं? If you have to highlight one or two differences or three differences, Indians जो यहाँ पे build कर रहे हैं, जैसे you've met like Bhavish and Ritesh and like marquee founders in the country you guys have invested in.
Yeah.
They are born here from the heartland roots और यहीं पे बना रहे हैं बड़े-बड़े.
Honestly, the characteristics, the reason that they're successful will be the same, which is they have to be smart, they have to be visionaries, they have to be resilient. So it's the same set of qualities. So it's not difference here, because the qualities, what it takes to succeed there, here, is the same set of qualities. Maybe you have to be, to use your word, you have to be a little more jugadu. You have to work around the system. But you have to do that everywhere, I think. Maybe it's more the case in India. You have to navigate things a little bit more.
There are more gray lines.
There are more gray lines. So I think that is probably true. And you have to be willing maybe to bend the rules a little bit, to be a little more flexible. Maybe that's the only thing.
Okay, let me make it more even like a bigger question.
Okay.
Indian startups versus US startups versus Chinese startups. क्या difference है तीनों जगह पे? What do you need to succeed?
So with China, it's become a case of how you deal with a completely unpredictable regulatory environment, right? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this famous Deng Xiaoping line, to be rich is glorious, right? Now, you don't want to be on that list of the richest people in China. You become a target, right? So China
Target meaning what?
Target meaning Jack Ma is a great example.
क्या हुआ?
Vanished for a few months. Think about that. Think about that happening in India. One of the richest men in China, Chinese entrepreneur in the world, you're absolutely right to correct me, disappeared. कुछ पता नहीं कहाँ गया. अभी तक किसी को पता नहीं कि कहाँ गया ये बंदा. Think about that, right? That happened to Jack Ma because he said a few things that were very critical of the government.
जैसे क्या?
That he basically said governments messing around with fintech. They basically called them stupid. So many words. right? I mean, very harsh. Just crazy thing to do. You wouldn't do that in India, asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't do that anyway,
Yeah.
right? Bad judgment. So China, India is a beneficiary of that. A lot of VCs have turned their back on China. Hindustan mein paisa laga rahe hain. This is great for India. Collateral beneficiary. Geopolitically, if you think about the consequence of this election, the confrontation with Trump as president with China is going to increase. Again, India is a collateral beneficiary. This is a good thing. So China, that's the big difference. The regulatory environment, government attitudes are so volatile. They can make you, break you. In India, it's a big deal too, but in China, it's binary. You could just disappear. Didi, for example, right? The equivalent of
Uber.
Great case study. The equivalent of Ola, more like Ola. Okay? The Uber merged with Didi. Near monopoly situation, great company, but again, the Chinese government decided all these tech entrepreneurs कि ये बहुत बड़े बन गए. They think they're बहुत बड़े आदमी हैं, इनको कुछ सिखाना है कुछ. Teach them a lesson, right? So they started scrutinizing their app. They weren't able to get any customers at all for a period of 9 months. Stock went from public company, US listed public company, stock went from, I think, all the way from $12 to $3, right? So that's the big difference, that unpredictable. In India, there's not, you have, kind of changes in attitude, but there's no discontinuity like that, right?
So that's China.
That's China. The US is the infrastructure there is the one big edge that the US has, which will not go away in my lifetime. Maybe it will last through your lifetime, is the edge they have in education. Right? So the Stanford University ecosystem, Caltech, MIT, they're great in India, but that whole ecosystem, for example, nobody in the world can compete with that. That's been created in Silicon Valley. It's an ecosystem with Stanford as its son, and with venture capitalists. That community that's been created and how it fosters startups and entrepreneurs is that's just really
Tell me how कैसे help करता है अगर मैं एक स्टूडेंट हूँ जो स्टैनफोर्ड में पढ़ता हूँ वर्सेस मैं पूरी दुनिया में कहीं भी और पढ़ता हूँ, कैसे हेल्प करता है मुझे एंटरप्रेन्योर बनने में या और बड़ा बनने में?
बिकॉज यू आर सराउंडेड बाय देम. आप जाओ स्टैनफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में, आप यूनिवर्सिटी एवेन्यू जाओ, द कैफे, एवरीवन's thinking about startups. There's so many stories around you, whether it's Jerry Yang, who started Yahoo, or the Google founders, Larry and Sergey, all students working out of someone's garage. You're surrounded by stories like that. You're surrounded by VCs, by investors who funded those companies, professors who've taught those people. That's what creates what you call an ecosystem. And that is, people have tried to replicate that. The UK, for example, in London, they're trying to replicate it. Rishi Sunak, when he was prime minister, he's telling people, Andreessen Horowitz, "Ab jo bhi karo yaar, please. What can we do for you? Ab London mein aao." People are trying to do that. SoftBank, my experience was the same, dealing with the government. Please, why don't you set up the Vision Fund here, which was incorporated, regulated in the UK. So governments can try and do a lot of things, but it's very, very difficult to create that infrastructure where you're just part of that mindset. You're just like, everyone around you is consumed by this whole startup culture.
इंडिया में बन रहा है कहीं पे ऐसा कुछ? Bangalore, Powai,
Bangalore.
Gurgaon.
People tell me it's either Delhi, broadly
Gurgaon,
Delhi,
NCR.
Gurgaon, NCR, or Bangalore and/or.